Oh, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Crunch Time here on a Saturday afternoon. I'm Britt Devine, joined by my good friends. We've got Tim the Tater Man and Mr. Spidey Bomb, TJ here. TJ, what's going on?
Oh, not too much. Ready to dive into this baseball slate. Thought I was just going to be behind the scenes today, but Will, my good friend, needed a sub in, so I'm back in front of the camera as well and ready to rock.
You're working more than you should be with a new child at home. No way. Don't. I give you a lot of credit for all the work that you are still doing with a new baby coming out. Tim, what's going on? Your new children days, they are long past us.
Yeah, my daughter just graduated 8th grade, so she'll be in high school next year. So I've got new things to worry about now. So yeah, it's definitely it was a big moment yesterday. That was her graduation, so that was a lot of fun.
Yep, the high school here is absolutely jam-packed today, just a couple blocks from where I am. I think that's high school. But regardless, we're here to talk baseball. There's a 10-game slate. I like, finally, it took, half the season, guys, and I said this last week. I'm glad this 4 o'clock slate, it's the main slate. Both sites are doing it as the main slate. Finally, we have some, both of them, they're not cooperating with each other. But we both know we get the same players on both sites, same games, everything like that. And it's just nice to finally have that as the weekend progresses. So let's get into this. Tim, we've got, between the bat and the Roto Grinders projections up towards the top today, we've got Freddie Peralta, Kevin Gausman. They're both pretty similar between the bat and Roto Grinders. I am vehemently against Kevin Gausman today. Hasn't really looked right now. I went against him in his last start, and that worked out pretty well from a scores and odds betting perspective. Don't particularly have a take today. I think the odds are pretty reasonable on either side of that game, so not looking to attack them personally. But when you look at his inconsistency compared to what Freddie Peralta's done, and I know there's a price difference today, there's no way, if I'm forced to choose between the two, specifically for cash, I know that's what me and you do. Well, that's what I do specifically. You dabble in some of the other stuff. I am definitely Peralta over Gausman, even though the projections seem to be pretty close from both of the things here on Roto Grinders.
Yeah, so I'm assuming you're talking FanDuel. I'd much prefer spending the extra $1,600 on Peralta over Gausman. I understand. I see that, the bat has Gausman for more raw points than Peralta, but I think I feel way safer with Peralta in cash games. So I'm not disagreeing with your take at all. Ian, I think that there's some really, really cheap bats on FanDuel too. So you can get away with paying that 10-5 for Peralta on FanDuel pretty easily.
Yeah. So Peralta's definitely DraftKings, my SP1. Are you doing Gausman as SP2? Because there's cheap bats on DraftKings. Also, you can use both of them if you want. I am not. I'm anti Kevin Gausman. He is not the 2023 pitcher that we saw. There's something different going on under the hood with him. The inconsistencies are there, and I know Oakland can be pesky sometimes too. They can just put up a bunch of runs against anybody, even though generally they do have a weakened lineup. So, are you on him? Are you on a Brian Bello, who has the absolute best possible matchup against Chicago? Are you taking a shot on one of the higher strikeout upside guys? Or are you going all the way down to maybe a Kyle Gibson, who's ultra cheap on DraftKings?
I'm going to go Gausman as my SP2, but I do not think anyone's bad if they don't want to do that in any format. So I am going to go Gausman as my SP2 on DK. Peralta, obviously, my SP1. I think I would rank them like all together. I'd go Peralta 1, Gausman 2, Bradish 3, Gibson 4, and then Bayo 5. That's what I probably do, just because Gibson is so cheap. Gibson projects incredibly well, both in our lineup HQ projections and in the bat projections. And at 6,900, that's very doable. So that allows you to do a lot of different things with your lineup. So he is definitely, I think he's even in the cash game conversation, as weird as that sounds. But I'm going Peralta, and I'm going to go Gausman on both my single entry team and my cash game team.
Yeah, I'm on the Kyle Gibson train for my cash team personally. As it stands right now, things can change during the show, but I just like some of the bats. There's plenty of cheap bats today, and there's really not this whole year, right? With it's very clearly the ball. There's something with that where, they hit the ball, the exact launch angle, they hit it with the exact exit velocity as last year, and it travels 10 feet less than it did last year. So there's definitely something with the ball compared to last year. Offense is down in general, but you still, if you want to get a Devers and you want to get some of these other expensive bats into your lineups, you do have to make a little concession. And that's what I'm doing with Gibson personally. TJ, where do you stand up towards the top? Do you have a Peralta or Gaussman take? Do you like Kyle Gibson? And let's get into the tournament structure on who's in the player pool.
On FanDuel, I think I would definitely prefer the $1,600 in savings over Gaussman, even in like a single entry, with probably a slight ownership difference between the two of them, Gaussman being a little bit less. Oakland is just a massive strikeout team, and the power is so mitigated by that ballpark. So he would still be my top one over there. On DraftKings, though, I'm basically just mixing and matching. Like I have no more than 20% of any pitcher in my pool. I do still have Peralta. I do still have Gaussman, but I'll be underweight on both of them. I'll be underweight on Bradish. I'll be even on Bayo. I'll be underweight on Gibson. And with that, I'm using it to get overweight on guys like Taj Bradley, Luis Medina, Andrew Heaney, Alec Marsh, all guys with upside today that are getting next to no ownership outside of Bradley. Bradley's really the only one picking up any ownership there, and he's the one I like the least of the group because he faces Baltimore, and Baltimore's fantastic. And so guys like Heaney, as a direct pivot off of Kyle Gibson, $200 less, I think he's got just as high, if not higher, upside than Kyle Gibson does, and he's coming in at 3% projected ownership, 4% projected ownership. And then guys like Gore I like, Medina I'm high on, and then even Alec Marsh. I'm not high on him by any means. I'm terrified, but the upside's definitely there against Seattle team with the highest strikeout rate in the league.
I think mine, if I had to pick my favorite large field tournament pitcher, you mentioned Mackenzie Gore against Atlanta. This Atlanta offense is not what it was last year for sure. He just had a good outing a couple games ago against them. He got hit up in his last outing, but he could certainly bounce back. And he has multiple 25, 30 fantasy point performances. And at his ownership of, 7% in a large field tournament, I think he would be my favorite if I was looking at it from that perspective. Do you have, I don't know if you mentioned Castillo at all. TJ, do you have a take on him? He's one of the expensive pitchers, a good real life pitcher. It's at KC today. Is he in the pool? Is he out? What's he looking like?
In the year of 2024, I just really don't need expensive pitchers. If I was going to be fading anybody else on this slate, it would be Peralta and Gaussman. I'm not playing Morton. I'm not playing Castillo. There's just no reason to this year, where the pitcher scores aren't as high from the aces. All the aces are getting hurt left, right, and center. I'm much more willing to take shots on average to below average pitchers with very low ownership this year compared to previous years.
Yeah, Tim, what's your take on that overall? To me, it's like, I guess to me, maybe you don't need the high end pitchers because pitching in general is better because there's less runs, so you can get reasonable scores out of the cheaper pitchers. And in theory, also, you don't need the best offenses because scoring's down. You know, if it's flat, the cheaper offense could possibly get it done. How are you playing that specifically on this slate today? If you were, MMEing sort of like our boy TJ.
Yeah, so as a general rule, I do agree with TJ. We don't have the super expensive stud pitchers like we've had in the past. We don't have Strider. We don't have DeGrom. We don't have prime Verlander or Scherzer. So we don't have those guys that are going to be putting up 40 DraftKings points, right? So we can live kind of in this mid range, and then like you said, maybe we're living in a new kind of dead ball season, so we don't have to pay up for the super expensive bat. So we get these more natural, like balanced builds. Today's kind of different. I think today's pricing is pretty soft when it comes to some of these stacks. So I feel like I can double barrel. Even if you don't want to play Gaussman, you could go Bradish. You could go Bradley, you could go Bayo. So, I don't mind Luis Castillo just because the context of this particular slate, there's a lot of cheap bats. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of my take. But I mean, it's all slate dependent. When I see really, really cheap, good stacks, I'm going to pay it for pitching because pitching is the less volatile position over hitters. So I'm still going to pay up for that safety most of the time.
All right.
And this is anecdotally for me. I haven't looked at the numbers, but are we sure that it's still accurate that scoring is way down and these balls are dead? Because over
Except for last Saturday.
but it's not
except
just
for last Saturday.
It's not just last Saturday. The last 2, 3, almost even 4 weeks, the balls have been flying. And like scoring has been really, really high the last couple weeks.
Maybe they've changed. I know last Saturday, I think I did the show, and that was the death of all pitchers. I'm convinced they changed the ball last Saturday just for a day. I have no proof of this, but that was the top. I think it was Taj Bradley and was it Bradish? Did they face off in that game? That was the game last weekend, wasn't it? And they both got. I know Bradley got absolutely smashed around. That was the Chris Sale game when he went absolutely into the tank on it. Just an absolutely horrific pitching day. I'm blaming it on the ball. They changed the ball against one day is why all of our pitchers failed. But that was one of the highest scoring days, I think, of the year. I think in general, to me, it's still very clear that this is the ball until if I would say, and I've talked to Cardi on this too, unless it's the All-Star break and we come out of the All-Star break, maybe they change it. But I think this is probably just going to be the ball for the season. But I think in general, offense is still pretty down and pitchers have the advantage generally overall. So let's talk about offense, TJ. To me, right, I think offense in general is a little muted. There's basically like 2 or 3 spots today I think a lot of people are going to be targeting. You've got Boston against I forgot his name here. I wrote him up on Scores and Odds. My bet of the day is Boston. The Boston run line first half. Anything you can do to take advantage of this White Sox pitcher, you got to do today. So we're going to be looking at the Boston offense. St. Louis, they're finally starting to come together a little bit here. They have a really nice matchup, and they're cheap. Anywhere else we're actively targeting? What do you think of those 2 offenses in general?
Boston, and who was the other one you were talking about?
I like a lot of the St. Louis bets. I'm sure Tim is too. He's talking about cheap stacks. That, without question, is a nice cheap stack today. You get the lefties in there.
Yeah, St. Louis I don't love. I like Nolan Gorman as a one-off, but they're one of my lower-owned stacks today. I'm not getting much of them at all. But Boston they're going to be chalky, but I don't think necessarily that it's bad chalk. I am getting to Boston as my second highest owned stack today. They got the highest total on the board. They're facing just a bad pitcher with a bad bullpen. So I'm not too concerned about the ownership there. Plus it's a 10-game slate. I don't think it's going to be all that egregious. And going with a lot of the expensive pitchers the cheap pitchers that I have, it allows me to get heavily overweight on the Devers and the Durans, as opposed to having to play a bunch of Bobby Dahlbeck or something like that. Cincinnati is one of my favorite tournament teams on the slate today. Ben Brown has looked really good so far in terms of strikeouts, but he also is a fly ball pitcher and he gets hit really hard. And in Cincinnati, that's not going to go very well. Atlanta's fine. Baltimore's fine. I really like the Cubs. But Milwaukee is actually my highest owned stack on the board today.
Yeah, I like Milwaukee quite a bit against Mize. Mize, I don't know. I don't think he's a very good pitcher. And Yelich, Contreras, Hoskins with power, Adames, even towards the bottom of this lineup, there's plenty of power too in that Milwaukee lineup. So I like that call. Tim, in general today, what are you looking at for offense? Mine, from the cash game perspective, I'm on Boston. I'm on those St. Louis lefties. Couple of Cubs, couple value bats. I could certainly see just a guy like Yelich. You can get Adames in there. They're just a little bit more than I think I want to pay on the slate in general, though.
Yeah, in terms of cash games, I think that you're looking heavily at Boston and you're looking heavily at St. Louis, and then there might be a couple of the cheaper end Cubs, and then I think there's also a couple of Mariners actually that you could conceivably play in cash. Also, I'm pretty high on the Mariners for stack. Also, I don't think they're going to be super highly owned, so I do think that Mariners are pretty interesting. If I was MMEing today, I'd be getting to a lot of Atlanta. They're not cheap, and I think a lot of people are going to be looking at some of the they're going to be looking at teams like Boston, like the Cubs, like Milwaukee. So I think Atlanta comes in pretty underowned, and we do have them as our top optimal percentage for this slate. And only, they're not going to be the highest owned either. So you get really good positive leverage with Atlanta. Atlanta is simming extremely well, also. So Atlanta to me is the top offense in terms of MME. But cash games, you probably want to really concentrate hard on that Boston St. Louis stacks.
You said Sim, so let me tell you about SimLabs. It's the expert DFS lineup generation tool from Roto-Grinders and Fantasy Labs. It's available for NBA, PGA, and baseball. On a few clicks, you can have hundreds of well-built correlated lineups for whatever contest you're playing, and you can get access to that with a Roto-Grinders premium subscription. So be sure to grab one if you want to try out the Sims. All right, position by position. Catcher, you mentioned you liked a couple Seattle bats, Tim. Cal Raleigh, he is a catcher here. He grades out, I guess on DraftKings, you can play Raleigh, I think, even on FanDuel if you have to. Not my total preference there. Do you want a guy who's cheaper in Connor Wong, who has average with a little bit of power and a really great matchup? Or do you want a guy like Cal Raleigh who's a little bit more expensive? Probably the matchup's still good, but not as good as Wong is, who's a little bit more power dependent. How are you handling that at catcher today? Those are probably most people's two options.
Yeah, those really are your two options. And also, talking about FanDuel real quick, you could conceivably play them on FanDuel too, because they're a really strong option and they're really, really cheap. So if you wanted to pivot off of the chalkier Patrick Wisdom, you could go like Cal Raleigh or Connor Wong. They're not projected too much worse than Wisdom. So, and they're similarly priced. So I think there's strong options on both sites. I'm going Connor Wong, but if people want to go Cal Raleigh, it's completely fine. So it's either one, but right now I'm doing Connor Wong.
Yeah, me too. I needed that extra savings. Wong's in a pretty good spot today. I'll take in for cash. I don't know, cardio, the Wisdoms, the Joey Gallos, right? When they hit the home run, they really help out your lineup. But when they get the 0 or the 2, it's not the greatest spot in your lineup. Give me the 5 to 7 consistent with a little bit of upside from Wong today. I'll take that from the catcher spot. And then TJ, I know catcher generally it's from stacks, but is there anyone you're absolutely trying to target as a one-off in particular?
I have 0 catchers as a one-off today. So no, my highest owned one is Contreras. Second is Wong, and it just goes in the order of my stacks.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So let's go to first base. Tim, what are we doing there? So you mentioned Wisdom. Wisdom is first base, third base, and outfield on FanDuel. You can sort of move him around. I mean, he's going to be in your FanDuel cash game lineup one way or the other.
Yeah.
I've found him. I managed to get him into the outfield. Where are you first? Let's start on Wisdom with FanDuel in particular, and then do you like him on DraftKings or are you spending up over there?
Yeah, I absolutely have I mean, he's definitely has to be in your cash game lineup on FanDuel. He's only 2,600, like you said. Try position eligibility. So I mean, pretty much have to play him in cash on FanDuel. You can do what you want in GPPs. So it's kind of tough. I'm considering playing Dominic Smith in cash on DK. He's only 3K, so I'm getting a little bit more savings with him with a stack that I like a lot more. So I am considering Dominic Smith. I haven't completely made up my mind yet, but it's going to be between Smith and Wisdom. Not a position that I really necessarily want to pay up for. I don't necessarily trust Paul Goldschmidt. I don't mind Rhys Hoskins. If you have the money, if you have that $4,100, I'd say go for it. I do like Milwaukee, like TJ does also. So really no issue with Rhys Hoskins if you have the money. But guys like Matt Olson, Vlad, Cody Bellinger, Vinny P, like for cash games, I have no interest.
TJ, what do you think of your boy Vlad, your Blue Jays in general, and then what are you doing at first base?
Yeah, not getting very much Vlad today. Blue Jays are very disappointing. I'm getting to some Vlad, but mostly at third base just because the Blue Jays have 2 other players who are super cheap at first base eligible today. And so I'm more likely to play Horwitz than I am Vladimir Guerrero, especially at first base today. Wisdom, obviously the top play. Rhys Hoskins is my favorite tournament play overall. But I also like, and all the guys Tim mentioned, Olson, Bellinger. But I also really like Ryan Mountcastle today for tournaments. He's probably my him and Hoskins are my two favorite low-owned plays.
Yeah, if Bradley gives up all those home runs like he did in his last start, you certainly might want to get some GPP exposure to the Orioles. Second base, Tim, what's that looking like on FanDuel? You've got Valdez for Boston. He's hitting second. He's 2,600. I don't know. Is he? I forgot on DraftKings where he is. Yeah, he's at second over there. He's 3,400. You've got Gorman at 4,100. Those are probably your two main targets on DraftKings when you're making teams today.
Yeah, that's right. Those are the two guys that I was contemplating with. It's probably going to be Valdez for me. 3,400 on DK, 2,600 on FanDuel. That's just so cheap. This is why it's so easy to play Peralta across the board, because it's just there's these guys that are like right around 2,500 across all positions that are like legitimate bats. So definitely Valdez for me in cash. There's other ways you could go about it, but I mean, again, this is not a position that I'm really enthused with spending up for, other than maybe Davis Snyder on DK. He's 4,700. I would consider that in cash games, but that would be as high as I would go.
And then TJ, what are you looking at from a tournament perspective? I think second base is, I don't know, if Gorman and Valdez are the ones getting most of the ownership, you've got Schneider too. I think on FanDuel, he's second base / outfield. He fits in there pretty well too. I think there's a reasonable amount of plays at second today.
Gorman and Valdez are definitely my two favorites as well, getting a lot of Aussie Albies, and then it's basically just guys in stacks for me. So Bryce Terang, getting to some Jordan Westberg in my Orioles stacks. India in my Cincinnati Reds stacks today. And that's mostly it today outside of Valdez, Gorman, Albies.
All right. Third base, Tim. I want to play Devers on all sites. I have managed to get him on my DraftKings team. Couldn't get him on my FanDuel team. I'm still messing around with it. He is like number one priority for me in terms of if you're spending up. He's by far the top option today. I want to get some exposure to him. Do you have any reason to not want to play him today? And then if you can't get to him, who are some of the other options? Of course, on FanDuel, you have Wisdom if you need a cheap play. But between first, third, and outfield, I'm not sure if third's the spot to deploy him on FanDuel.
No, I mean, if you can't get to Devers, I mean, you should be prioritizing Devers, because we don't really have that super loaded outfield like we often do. So like there's no Judge, there's no
third
Ohtani,
base is
so,
by
like,
far
really
the strongest position today.
Yeah.
So I would really just try to like redo your team, honestly, Britt, and cash anyway. If you can't get the Devers on FanDuel, because I think you really should be playing him. If you absolutely can't, I mean, Christopher Morel, I guess, is fine. I'm curious to see how many people click on Matt Chapman in GPPs, because I love him in large field stuff. Just as a one-off, I'm not super high on the Giants. And then also Austin Riley. I wonder how many people are going to be clicking that name, because I know the Sims love Atlanta. So, I mean, getting to like a 3-man of Atlanta with some Austin Riley instead of Devers, that's a pretty good leverage point right there. So I think third base, if I'm MMEing, it's a pretty strong position to spread out. But if I'm playing cash or just one lineup, I think Devers is really strong chalk.
Yeah, it's Devers or Morel. Hopefully he gets a hold of one and hits a home run today would probably be my two choices. TJ, you said there's a lot of options. Is there anyone in particular third jumping off the ownership page to you?
Devers, Wisdom, and Morel. I have at least 20% of each of them. And then Royce Lewis, I'm trying to double the field on today. Austin Riley, I'm getting to a lot of. A little bit of Vlad. I like Josh Rojas batting second. And then even like Abraham Toro leading off, I'm taking some shots on Oakland stacks against Gaussman. I like the Chapman call as well. You pair him with Ramos, and as you got a beautiful little mini stack 2-man there to go with whatever 5-man you're using. Very, very strong position today. Anybody who outside of Vlad, because the Blue Jays have 2 other first basemen I want to play. Anybody that has third base eligibility and eligibility for another position, and then Wisdom as well, just because he's such a good play, I limited them to only be able to use at their other positions today. First Spidey Bomb will drop at 75 likes. We are 15 away. And then I got 2 more if we can get up to 100, which should be nice and easy since we got over 350 people watching on YouTube, over 700 watching across the site. So let's get these likes way up, and I got some Spidey Bombs.
All right, Spidey Bombs are great. Let's get those going. Shortstop, there's 2 guys for me. You've got Mason Wynn, you've got O'Neal Cruz. Tim, for me, from cash, sort of in that mid-tier. Is that what you're thinking? Or are you doing something? I mean, Bobby Witt's great, but can't really get up to him today, and matchup's not the greatest. I'm just going down the price ladder a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely Mason Wynn on DK. Let me.
You guys would go Wynn over Swanson?
I am definitely.
On DK. Yeah, Swanson's 28 on FanDuel.
He's only $200. He's only $200 more on DraftKings too. Bat and cleanup today. The bats got him for over a full point projected more than Win.
I never like going against the bat, and I know Tim doesn't either. But I'm on board with Tim here. I'm playing.
Plus Swanson's been hot.
Well, that's always a good reason to play somebody. But I do like the O'Neal Cruz call also. I mean, shortstop's kind of sneaky loaded today, and it's not very expensive either. These options. Even a guy like Adames is really not that bad at 4,500. So yeah, I mean, you really can't play Bobby Witt or De La Cruz. I love CJ Abrams, but too expensive. All those guys are too expensive for cash. But yeah, I mean, TJ's right. You can play Swanson in cash games. I just like the Cardinals matchup better. So I am going to go against the bat, and I'm going to play Mason Wynn at 35.
So TJ, are you heavily overweight on Swanson today?
Yeah, he's my highest owned bat, but I think he's like by far the top option today at shortstop on DraftKings. Fly ball pitcher in a small park. And Swanson's been hitting the ball really well lately after his terrible start, bumping him up to cleanup as opposed to 8th where he was before then. So I'm a big fan of Swanson today. O'Neal Cruz and Mason Wynn are actually number 3 and number 4 for me. I got Gunnar Henderson up above both of them, either as part of a stack or as a one-off. I want to get to as much Gunnar as possible today. And then Willie Adames, Orlando Arcia batting 6th, and Carlos Correa would be the next guy on my list. But I also really always like including David Hamilton in my Boston stacks, a guy people kind of always forget about.
Speaking of Boston, let's go to the outfield, Tim. You've got Duran, probably my second priority today on both sites outside of, I just want to take, who is it? Let's see here. It's Nastrini, I believe it was. I almost wrote him up as Jabroni on scores and odds today, but I didn't. I deleted that before I published it. This dude's stats are so bad, and if you go into StatCast, like literally everything is there's no hope for this guy today against Boston today, is what I'm saying. So I'm on Duran. I'm trying to get Devers. Anyone who can get from Boston, that's why we're on Wong at the catcher position, is a top priority for me. Rice Snyder, even though he's cheap, maybe not the best bat today, but offense in general isn't overall the greatest. I think he's certainly someone you can make a priority. I'm trying to get these Boston bats in there anyway. You've got Burleson from the Cardinals. What is he? He's 3,400, hitting towards the top of the order for St. Louis if you need a value play. If you had to spend up, would you rather Ozuna, or I know Julio Rodriguez he's popping in the bat. I know the Roto Grinders projections like him today. Like I would play Ozuna 10 out of 10 times over Julio Rodriguez as it currently stands today. Where do you stand on a guy like Rodriguez who's just popping in the projections but really having a down year?
Yeah, Julio's a really tough click today. The issue that I'm having is that I really like that Seattle stack. So I feel like this might be like, usually I'll make like a 1v1 or 2v2 between my single entry team and my cash game team. I might leave Julio in with my Seattle stack and then play somebody else in cash games because he's just been so bad. He's a really tough click today. So, it's tough. I think in cash, I prefer Jarren Duran for the Red Sox. So I don't want to pay that much for Ozuna. I still prefer Duran over Yelich. So I think in cash games, my priority spend up at outfield would be Jaren Duran. I think you could play Ref Snyder in cash games if you are laying at that price point. I have no issue with that. Elliot Ramos at 3,400. I think he's a really strong cash game play also. Alec Burleson, you mentioned, I think he's a very strong play.
Ramos or Burleson, if you gotta choose between them on DraftKings.
Yeah,
the same price
so I like the Cardinals. I like the Cardinals overall better, so I would have to lean Burleson. But I think either one's fine. And I think if you need a real outright punt, my favorite would be Ezekiel Duran at 2,500.
Yep, I as well. I'm on Burleson over Ramos at that same price tag on DraftKings today. TJ, what are you doing? The high price guys. I don't know. There's no. I know you like Milwaukee, and I wouldn't fault anybody for playing Yelich at 5,400. I would play Duran. However Tim's pronouncing him. I'm sure Tim probably has the correct pronunciation, not me.
I probably don't.
No. All right. So whatever his actual last name is. What would you rather do here at the top end? Duran's my favorite. I know you like Yelich. How are you handling Julio today? Just a lot of different ways you could play the top.
Well, I don't have to choose, luckily, because Duran, Duval, and Ozuna are my 3 highest owned outfielders today. But I just a little bit of trivia for the 3 of you. In the last 13 games, over the last 2 weeks and just a little bit, how many hits and home runs does Julio Rodriguez have?
He's finally started because he had one like last week or 2, and now he has 5 home runs. I saw, so he's got to be heating up, playing the hot streak. Did he fix the swing? Who knows?
In the last 13 games, he's got 15 hits and 3 home runs. So he hasn't been bad in a while now. He's back to Julio Rodriguez. It's a baseball season, right? Over the course of the year, they're gonna have their cold spells, their hot streaks, and it seems as he's shaken off his cold start to the year. So that's actually not why I'm underweight on him. Just if he wasn't super highly owned today, I would be getting a lot of Rodriguez. But of all of these guys we're projecting for double-digit ownership at the outfielder position, I am only getting Jaren Duran and Adam Duvall are the only ones of that entire group that I'm on actually like basically at all today. My 3 highest owned are Duran, Yelich, Duvall, Ozuna. Ozuna and Duvall are tied. And then I'm getting to a lot of Elliot Ramos, a lot of TJ Friedl is somebody I really love today. Pardon me, either as a one-off or as a part of a stack. And then some cheapies I like as well as one-offs, like a Daz Cameron as a pivot off of the Ezekiel Duran. He's batting leadoff today or second or something like that for Oakland. And then I like the Cubs bats quite a bit. I like the Orioles bats quite a bit. Ryan O'Hearn, Anthony Santander. How many likes are we at here? We are at 91. So let's get these up. Let's get these up 9 more, and I'll drop 3 Spidey bombs for you all at once here. So the first one, we got my guy Dansby Swanson batting cleanup today, plus 400 on FanDuel. Dansby Swanson, Spidey bomb number 1. Number 2, Christian Yelich plus 625 today. And number 3 is the aforementioned TJ Friedl. You can find him for plus 575. Those are the 3 Spidey bumps for the day. TJ Friedl, Dansby Swanson, and Christian Yelich.
I like the Yelich and Friedl ones. The odds on those I think are pretty nice. The Swanson one is about right for what I think I would pay for him. The other ones seem like a reasonable shot, a home run. I'm not going to argue against you though, TJ. You're pretty good on the Spidey bomb, so I might as well go ahead and get all 3 of them in there. Tim, you got any bets?
Oh, 2 other guys that were in consideration, I will admit, were Rhys Hoskins also at plus 400 as opposed to Swanson, but because
that's who I was just going to say.
And Tim and Britt were disrespecting Swanson, I had to get him in there, and then the other one was Ryan Mountcastle at plus 450.
Yeah, Yelich is plus 630 right now on FanDuel.
Yeah, I'm looking at Yelich and I'm looking at Hoskins right now. Hoskins, I can only bet DK, so like 350 for Hoskins, not great. Probably not going to do that, but I might take a shot on the Yelich plus 500. and he's
Yeah.
630 on He's 630 on FanDuel.
Yeah,
So-
FanDuel's open right now. We're going on FanDuel to
Yeah.
get the Yelich. I didn't see the odds that high earlier. I think they might
Eric
have
Johnson
boosted it.
really likes Hopkins today, so that's why I also couldn't pick him as a Spidey bomb. That's just
Oh yeah,
we can't do that.
I'm definitely not betting Hoskins then.
All right, I'm in. I followed you in on Yelich. I'll see if I can get the other ones as the show progresses. Let's see here. If you guys have any questions, post them in the YouTube, post them in the live stream chat on the Roto Grinders Discord, and I will get to them as soon as I can. Going to look at the. Let's see. Don't see any in the live stream chat on Discord. I'm going to go to YouTube. Let's see if I can find a couple of questions here. Friedel, Hoskins over Yelich. Let's see. Don't have any there. Where do you rank the Boston stack today? So, like, if they're going to be the highest owned, do we think they're going to be the highest owned stack today? Like, I personally would believe they are.
I think it's going to be pretty close to, and I think they'll likely be slightly the highest owned. But I think Boston, St. Louis, and Seattle are all going to be pretty similar.
Yeah, I would have the Sims and all these things, they spread out the ownership, right, over the course of everything. But Boston, I don't know. This is like about as nut of a spot as you can get for an offense would be against Nestrini and the bullpen here. I don't care about the ownership on Boston. They would be by far my top stack today. It's not enough ownership in my opinion. Tim, what do you think?
Yeah, I personally think Boston will be the highest owned. I think Seattle's going to get a lot of love also. I think the Cubs are going to get a lot of ownership. So those would be my highest three.
Atlanta's starting to project for a lot of ownership here as well.
Oh, did they boost it? They boosted up a little bit?
Yeah, like no one is like egregious, but the whole team is basically picking up ownership. Like 15 for Albies, 12 for Olsen, 13 for Riley, 11 for Duvall. And so I actually it's interesting enough. My favorite way to stack Atlanta would be like Ozuna, Duvall, Murphy, Arcia. And that's actually like the low owned way of doing it. So that I actually do find interesting.
I just found your TJ Friedel was a Spidey bomb you had, right?
Yeah.
I just got it for a plus 700 if you have the so that's on Bally's, but that's also a Bet Rivers clone. It's a little lower odds on Bet Rivers if any of you have it, but a plus 700 on TJ Friedel. Double TJ, can't go wrong with that, right?
Exactly. Spidey, but that's how I know that offense is up lately, because the Spidey bombs are hitting. They weren't at all at the start of the year, but now the Spidey bombs are going wild.
All right. Any more YouTube? Who would you pair with Brewers? Or would you pair Brewers with Red Sox or Cubs? This is a FanDuel tournament. TJ, I'm going to throw that to you. I think these are all three offenses we like today.
Brewers, Cubs, and who is the other one?
Would you pair the Brewers with the Red Sox or the Cubs? This is on FanDuel.
It would depend on which Cubs or Red Sox I was using, but probably the Red Sox.
Yeah, I would say the Red Sox are just my anything you can do to get Boston into your lineups today.
It's just tournament. Like if it's Dahlbeck, Smith, Rafaela, like I would rather some of those Cubs guys. But if it's Valdez, Duran, and Devers, I would definitely rather them.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone on Marsh versus Seattle today? I know, Tim, you like the Seattle offense. So let's flip it around. Why do you like Seattle against Marsh? But do you also see a reason to maybe want to take Marsh as a pitcher at all? Could that go through your head at all?
You definitely can. I mean, Seattle has the highest K rate in all baseball, so you can always play a pitcher against them. I just kind of like that. Marsh is very inconsistent. He's not great against lefties. He definitely, guys like I feel like they're a little bit too cheap. Guys like Cal Rowley, Luke Raley, Julio's back again apparently. JP Crawford. I think it's a super affordable stack. So I don't think Alec Marsh is anything special. I would definitely side on the Seattle side of this matchup. But if you want to take shots on Alec Marsh, he's got a 20% K rate on the season. The Mariners strike out a ton. I don't absolutely hate that.
Yelich or Duran, if you have to pick one. I'm on Duran. I can absolutely see why people would want to play Yelich. I know you like the Brewers, TJ, so let's throw it to you. You're probably the highest on everyone on Yelich today. Who you got between them and that matchup?
If my lineup is somewhat chalky, it's Yelich. If I am doing a different pitcher or a different stack, it's Duran.
All right. Flores versus Heaney on DraftKings. Didn't he just hit 2 home runs? That's why his name's popping up in the chat not too long ago in a game. Was that Flores? I think it was, right?
Flores, Ramos, Chapman. All three of those guys are totally fine, and I like them as a mini stack. I don't like the full stack for the Giants, but those three as one-offs or as mini stacks are all right.
All right, let me see if anything's come through on the live stream chat. I don't have any there. Let's see. We've got that one. The Giants. So I saw you basically handled the Giant stack. The Padres aren't on the slate. That's later. If you had a single entry stack, Tim, you play in those streets sometimes. What's going on in the single entry streets today?
So I think Boston, St. Louis. I think they're going to be extremely popular. We talked about how Atlanta is going to be getting some ownership. I'm just looking through our projected ownership right now. It's St. Louis. I'm seeing a lot of St. Louis. I'm seeing a lot of Boston. Atlanta's starting to creep in there a little bit. I'm seeing a lot of Cubs. And I think just my personal opinion, I like Seattle. So I don't think they're going to be that high owned either.
Real quick, I want to go back to pitching if people are searching this last second. TJ, what's the tournament ownership look like for you at pitching?
At pitching today, I have no one higher than 20% owned, and I have a big pool of pitchers today. Kevin Gausman, Kyle Gibson, Freddie Peralta. Yes, I'm playing the chalky ones, but I'll be underweight. Same with Bradish and Bayo. But then I'm looking to play about 20% each of Luis Medina, Andrew Heaney, Alec Marsh, Taj Bradley, Mackenzie Gore as well. And I even have just a sprinkle of Ryan Feltman.
And then Tim, from the cash game perspective, I think we're both on Peralta as your number one option, FanDuel and DraftKings. Are you still rolling with Gausman as your SP2? I've gone down the price tier. I'm on Gibson against those Rockies away from Coors, looking for Gibson to at least give me a reasonable amount of points out of that.
Yeah, I'm still with Gausman as my SP2 on DK. Totally with you. Peralta as your SP1 on FanDuel and DK. I'm fine with Gibson. I'm also fine with Bradish if you want to play him in cash games.
All right, let me just quadruple check. We have any questions? My bet of the day, without question, from Scores and Odds was the squad ride. The odds have gotten worse. Generally, when I post something early in the morning or even the night before, it seems like we always get the CLV. Hence why I am limited on basically every sports book known to existence. But we're going with Boston minus 1.5 on the run line today, and we're going Boston minus a half a run on the first 5 innings. If you can get that, you should be able to get those below minus 150 on your choice of a sports book. I'm all in on the Red Sox crushing Nastrini before handing it over to a very weak bullpen and continuing the runs while Bello keeps the runs limited against the White Sox, which I don't generally, it's not too hard to do that except for the pitcher last night for Boston. Anything else, TJ? Anything coming to mind? Any extra bets? Any more likes we can squeeze out of these people?
Always get the likes up. Mr. Gerg says he's stacking the Blue Jays. I'm stacking a little Blue Jays as well, but I do have more Medina. And then Andrew's asking about the DK 2-up promo for money. And I honestly, who's your favorite?
Here, let me just
for that. I honestly don't know what that is. So
yeah.
And then one other person asking about the Twins, and I actually do like the Twins as a team today, as a team stack.
So it's an up 2 promo. If your team gets up 2, then you automatically win the bet. It's for like $10, $25, $100. Mine's been a 10 for a while, though it did get up to a whopping $25 today. So real quick, let me see. I always like I take a road team over the home team because you get that half an inning the entire way of the game to get up by 2. So I always like the road team. I would probably take Boston the money, and I like to get some. No, well, Boston for sure, but I like to get a team a little closer to even money than a minus 230 favorite on DraftKings. So Baltimore. I would go with Baltimore or probably I think the Cubs make a pretty reasonable one there today. They're plus 105 if you're looking for a plus money. So I probably do Baltimore or the Cubs for the up to promo on DraftKings. Tim, you got any bets, any promos, anything you're kicking around?
The only thing that I bet was Yelich to hit a home run plus 500. That's the only thing I did.
Yeah, sorry, I got the 630, but we'll both be ruined for
That's
that.
all right. That's all right.
500 is good enough too. If I had to sell it for that, I would take that as well. All right, guys, we're gonna get out of here. Thanks to Tim for showing up. Thanks to TJ for filling in for Will and running the show as usual. I'm Britt. Thanks to all of you for watching. Click the like button on the way out, and we out you.